Oh. Oh man, that's a nice ending. Okay. Okay. I just finished up reading Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb. This was the third book and the final book in the trilogy, The Fitz and the Fool, and the 16th and final book in the realm of the Elderlings. And I want to give you my unedited thoughts upon finishing the book, which was just now. This is going to be hard to explain because my range of emotions here have been going all over the place. I just got done sobbing 5 minutes ago, and the ending of this is very touching and impactful, and I'll never forget it. Wow, that ending is so good. So let me try to get together here and try to get my thoughts out from beginning to end, which is going to be difficult because I don't know that I've ever read a book that really made me feel the range of emotions that I just went through for the past, 800 so pages. So, to the beginning, when I was reading this book, I was about 30% in, and I was very worried. I'd say that I was going to score this book like a 3.5, maybe 4 stars based on what I had been reading up to that point. And that's disappointing because I've read, this is the 16th book in the series, and by and large, they've all been incredible. But you always want the series to end on an amazing note. That's truly what makes an amazing series. You can have books have some stutter steps, but it really needs to end hot to really be memorable and to be known as one of the all-time best series. And I really felt like this book was, marching down the field and was about to fumble on the goal line, to use a football analogy. But at about the 50% way, everything changed. And from that point forward, everything came together, and the plot just struck an amazing course that it became, in my opinion, the best of the 16 books, and will go down forever for me as one of the greatest fantasy stories that have ever been told. Not just this book, but the series at large. I'm going to have trouble thinking of 5 better fantasy series ever. This is absolutely within the top 5. Just absolutely incredible experience. And I'm so thankful for Robin Hobb for writing this story so I could experience it. The amazing thing, I think, about this book was not only did it finish things out so nicely and do such a wonderful job at telling this story in not a cheap way, but it fixed my problems with some of the previous books. There are 3 books in particular that I've had a little bit of a problem with. I've had a problem with Assassin's Quest, and I've had a problem with the first 2 Rainwild Chronicles books. And this book fixed those for me. I now understand the point of the second half of Assassin's Quest and why I was taken on this extremely long journey, because it all got brought home for me. I understand the point of including the Rainwild Chronicles in here, which to this point I felt like was an unnecessary inclusion in this story. And while I did like the last 2 books in the Rainwild Chronicles, whatever a 4 is called, quartet, I think they call a 4 series book, or 4 book series, it really makes sense now why that story was told. And I'm left with that feeling, and it feels more of a fact than an opinion, that Robin Hobb really planned these books out from the beginning. Because you can't just tie in and throw in book after book and have them tie in so well. It's so expertly done. And I'm so thankful that she did that slow burn style that she does. And she didn't just throw out all the things I needed to know. It would have been so easy to do that. She kept so many things hidden until this last book, and it hit that much harder. And the last bit of the book, I thought I knew how this story was going to end. And in part, I did. I think everybody does. But not the form that it takes. And the form that it takes is very special. And once the reader realizes the direction that Robin Hobb is taking us in the last 100 or so pages, it's extremely emotional. And it brings up so many feelings that you've been going through for this whole series, all to culminate into this. It's just an amazing experience, and I'm so happy that I went through it. The story here is magical. I love this quest. I think ultimately this final series is probably my favorite. I think it's going to overtake Live Ship Traders for me as the best of the series here, even though I love Live Ship Traders and what it did. The ability for this one to not only finish out the trilogy, but finishing out the entire series. And it stuck the landing in such a perfect way. The story scope was a lot bigger than the previous books. And something that I really appreciate is that, and it sounds hokey for me to say this, but every single major character in the series got their story wrapped up in this book. Even characters that you did not think would be able to be in this book, they got tied in a wonderful way. And I don't think I'm spoiling anything by saying that. The locations that showed up in the previous book got wrapped into this book somehow and did it in an amazing way. And I've been critical of certain books before that really just try to tie up all loose ends. And I've made comments before that one of the reasons that I truly love Malazan, and it goes down as my favorite series, is that it didn't try to tie up everything. It allowed things to be left hanging, which is more true to life. But apparently you don't need to be true to life to make a wonderful series. And this book does it. Because I feel closure with everybody. And it's not a good closure in some cases. Sometimes it's a very sad one. Or a depressing one. Or in some ways, a very like kind of bad situation happens to a character. But I appreciate their arc getting wrapped up and understanding and appreciating what happened. So the story was a huge, huge hit. Another thing that I always like to talk about in my series is the world building. And the world building in this book was the best of the whole series. And you're probably going to hear me say this a few times now. That it took that scope of the world, which was huge and magical and just so riveting, and it really tied it home by bringing a certain location, which I will not bring up here to avoid spoilers, and tying it into the story. A location that I've been desperately hoping that would be included in this series. From the first trilogy, I felt this thing, and the nice thing for me is I knew that this location existed, and I thought that would be so cool if I got to understand more about that place, but I know that I won't. It's clearly not going to happen. And they're just going to have to leave this as a mystery. Well, the mystery's gone. I got it, and I'm so thankful that I did. It brought up this new location with new characters to go along with it. And it was brilliant. I love the arc that happened once the characters got there. I love the beginning, middle, and ending of that certain arc. And it would have been very easy to finish the book after that arc ended. But there was a good 20% of the book left to go, and I felt when I was reading it that why are we doing this? The book ended already, but it didn't end, and it's amazing. And I've never read a book quite like this one that made you feel like we are unnecessarily drawing things out, but to be proven so wrong. I was wrong. It was necessary and important, and really tied everything together. The fantasy elements of this book, the one area that I've criticized in Realm of the Elderlings, I have not loved the magic systems that have been used in this series. I do love dragons. I thought the dragons have been implemented in a very unique way. But the magic has been left wanting. Well, another magic, not a whole system, but a new type of magic gets really not invented in this book, but explored in way more detail. And it's my favorite of the magics in this series, and it was wonderful to read about. It didn't feel overpowered. It didn't feel underpowered. It felt just right. And it had such a wonderful feeling reading about it. It added a lot of depth to a couple of these characters. It added major tension. And it was very fun to have these characters discover themselves and to discover new elements that empowered these things. That was just cool. There was to kind of go back to the story comments I was making, but there were even moments in the Live Ship Traders trilogy that felt like, it's interesting to read about, but why is this here? And in retrospect, it left a couple threads loose. And this book went and cleaned those up too. And it's just such a wonderful job at story building here that it's just magical what happened. The characters I'm not going to spend a lot of time here on because every time I do this, I talk about the same things and I use the same superlatives. But the character writing here is the best in any series that has ever been written in fantasy. And maybe in writing as a whole. The character work is incredible. And I'm left with this feeling like Robin Hobb is the master. And I wish others would find a way to mimic her style and elevate it. Because you could sure learn a lot from character writing as a writer by studying the way that Robin Hobb writes her characters. She could literally write characters doing nothing, and she has for large portions of certain books. And I will be riveted to the story because how well they're done. Her plots sometimes have struggled, but I don't care when I'm so invested in these characters and their lives and just going through regular life. It's an amazing thing. And I say this as a person that likes epic fantasy. I love huge set pieces and explosions and huge magic and gigantic beasts fighting each other. And this book had some of that, but all of the other parts too really just worked. Overall, my enjoyment of this book is hard to be matched by anything else. I won't say that this is my favorite book ever, but it's up there. It's up there, and you could make a case for it being the best book that I've ever read. There's some Malazan books that I think I ultimately like more, but I think this is a top 5 best fantasy book that I've ever read. And I'm just so happy that I got the experience to be able to go through this. So if you're watching this review and you've not read Realm of the Elderlings yet, take the plunge. If you're watching this review and the Rainwild Chronicles has got you down and you're not super enthused about continuing on, keep going. The best has yet to come. And ultimately, I plead with you to give Robin Hobb a chance, because if you like this book and this series, even a fraction as much as I do, you will not waste your time by reading these books. So there's my review. Hope you'd enjoyed it, and thanks so much for watching. Happy reading to you.